Good people on the quest for good content. Welcome to another installment of Song of the Week here on Good People Content. I am one of your hosts, per usual, Bill Farrow, here with the master of the channel, Jordan Bell, and special guest, rapper, Atlanta-based, Maryland-born, Leek Mali.
What's
Leek,
going on? What's going on?
talk to us. How you been, bro?
I'm good. I'm blessed. Glad to be here. And yeah, I'm grateful.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Leek, you got some new music that you're pushing these days. Tell us a little bit about your style as an artist and tell us about this new project you got going on.
Yeah, in terms of my new project, Maryland Boy, I just wanted to kind of revamp myself or reintroduce myself to the world, to my listeners, to new listeners, because I've been doing this for about 7 to 8 years now, and now I'm at a different point in my life, and I just feel like my listeners need to hear a different or new perspective of me or where I'm at in my life right now. And sometimes a lot of things are going on in the world every day. So sometimes you just have to let people know again that you do this, where you from, your background, your story, just in case people forgot. So that was the whole point of this project, Maryland Boy, for me.
Excellent. So getting back to the roots, but
Yeah,
you can't get back to the roots unless you start somewhere, go somewhere, and then come back, right? So
definitely.
I'd love to hear a little bit about college days. I was giving it a
Yeah,
spin over the course of these last few days, just getting familiar with your catalog. And I'd love to talk about this idea of narrative, because all of your projects that I listen to have motifs, themes, and a continuous narrative through skits, characters, your different voices that you layer onto tracks. Talk
yeah.
to me about how your narrative style, or I suppose your persona, personality, or how you think about the world has changed from college days to Maryland Boy. I'd love to hear kind of the internal dialogue on how you've evolved over these last 7 years.
Yeah. So in terms of how I come up with narrative of these albums I write, I really want you to listen to it as if you're reading a book or as if you're watching a short film or something like that. That's the point. That's why I implement all the skits and stuff like that. I like really like the realism, within the music for you to actually be there with me. If you can imagine that in your mind. And also a lot of the art that I study, like shit from Outkast, Aquemini to, Reasonable Doubt to early Wu-Tang, Kendrick Lamar, huge influence on me. Good Kid, Mad City, I feel like changed my life, you know. And as we all know, that was like just like a movie within itself, So I think a lot of the greats that came before me that I studied did that. So it's like, if I'm gonna do this, if I relate to their music, I feel like I got to do this in my own way. So at the same time, but in terms of what's changed from now, from my college days era, I think patience is the biggest thing. Even though I do feel like I had a lot of skill during that time, but in terms of where I wanted to go in terms of trajectory into the industry, I wasn't patient during that time. I felt like everything had to happen now. I feel like God had to align me, where I actually needed to be. And being okay with my process is the most important thing I feel like I learned within these last couple of years. Being okay with where I'm at and understanding where I'm at because this is where I'm supposed to be at. Nothing's magic. Nothing happens overnight. And throughout your process, a lot of things you got to learn. I feel like once you get to that point that you want to be at, that you've been praying for, it's like you get a chance to appreciate that journey and reflect on it. And it makes your journey that much better. Just to
For
answer the
sure.
question. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned Outkast, and I get a little bit of an Outkast vibe, particularly from like your own personal aesthetic and then your visuals. There feels like a little bit of you dare to be different a little bit in your visuals. You dare to kind of look at things through a different lens. Talk about them a little bit, and then anybody else that really influenced you as you kind of decided to hop into this game of music and just being creative in general.
In terms of Outkast, shout out to them because they just got in Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
For sure,
Hmm.
for
I've
sure.
been waiting for that, man. I think it was well deserved a long time ago, but better late than never. Yeah, I really enjoy how they are so unapologetic with being, uniquely themselves, even within the group, within the duo, Big Boy is Big Boy and Andre is Andre, and just I think they play a big part in why I moved to Atlanta, honestly. Like before even moving here, like just hearing like, different street names, neighborhoods, they slang, the lingo, the things that they thought, was fun to do, within the city, I think really attracted me to the city at the end of the day. But their way of being creative and storytelling is just what attracted, you know, my ears to them. I just feel like they just put me in a different universe for an hour or two, you know? And now that's just something I could appreciate just because, you know, when I create my music now, I want you to be in a different place than you are physically, you know, and I think they always did that to me.
Yeah, Outkast did, like you said, shouts out to them for making the Rock Hall. The Rock Hall's here in Cleveland, and I just went with my mother a couple weeks ago, and they had the display up and everything. It was really cool to see that.
Mhm.
But yeah, you're right. There are artists that are able to bring something different to the game. There are artists that are able to bring their own flair. And then there are artists that are able to kind of make you go, what the hell is that? I've never seen that before. I've never heard that before. You know, I mean, Bill talks about it really well. Andre was wearing a dress and people were like, I don't want problems with him. Like, he's that talented that he could in the 90s could rap with it, you know what I'm saying? Could rap with a dress on, and people were like, I'm cool on him. I'm nowhere near as talented as him. I don't want those problems. So yeah, I think those are really two really good guys to be influenced by, but not everybody looks at them as someone, you know, to kind of like as like a base for their career or someone to be inspired by, because I think some people are scared of trying to be that unique and be that different.
Yeah, I think it's you have to appreciate transparency. Even just like what you just said, the way he dressed, he was so transparent within his words, but also how he presented himself to the world outside of the music. You know, that's I think as a fan, as a listener, I can appreciate that. You know, because there's you don't know who else in this world can relate to your story, relate to who you are, but they just don't have that artistic outlet to you know show the world to display.
For sure.
Definitely. No, it's really well said. I want to focus a little bit on this conversation of influences. We are children of the internet, you know what I mean? So we see a lot of different stimulus over the course of just a day. My song of the week relates to that, but I'll save that for now. Talk to me about some other media or mediums that inspire you outside of music. You listed some artists that you draw a lot of inspiration from, but you mentioned a couple movies or a couple movie titles throughout the course of your catalog. Again, referencing my song of the week that I'll share in a few minutes here. But what are some of those other, and you mentioned that you structure your albums in the sense of a narrative or a book or another medium that you can immerse yourself in. Talk to me about some of those pivotal and influential books, plays, movies that really grabbed your attention and that you build your musical narrative, not necessarily around, but draw inspiration from. That's interesting to me because we're all multifaceted, you know?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of people don't know I do a lot of research on a lot of niche things, and I watch a lot of interviews. I like if you could ask, some people could ask me a random question about an artist or you know somebody that we might see in the media, you know, pretty often, and I might just know that answer just because I do a lot of research on things like that. I just like information. I'm hungry for information, music and outside of music. Like I'm into like hearing about mob stories, like American crime, stuff like that. I've been on a binge and even have a lot of books on Iceberg Slim.
Yep.
So I've researched a lot about pimping and prostitutes and stuff like that. Like, you know, that's not everyday conversation a lot of people like to have, but you know, I just like to research information and understand why people are the way that they are. You know, I think that draws a lot of inspiration and just being able to get out and live life. Like I'm also a realtor here in Georgia, so being able to take a break from music and have conversations with people about the biggest purchase they might make in their whole life brings inspiration, you know, because I'm not only a real estate agent, but I'm also their therapist. You know what I'm saying? I'm also a resource to maybe their credit if they need something else, you know, like you never know. I'm also I just started therapy, you know, so I get a chance, you know, once or twice a week to sit down in front of somebody and just lay out all of my thoughts and not saying I'm looking for an answer to my problems, but you know, looking for ways or different ways to cope with them and learn how to evolve myself. You know, I like to say like, well, I used to say like, I need to change. I don't want to be the same person I am right now next year, but it's not even that. It's like I'm learning, I'm giving myself the opportunity to evolve, you know, 'cause there's nothing wrong with me. You know, I just have to learn how to be more kind with myself, you know, and just, you know, learning a different language, you know, to implement in my evolvement as a person.
Yeah.
Amazing.
You mentioned therapy, which is really interesting to me. You know, we got 3 black men on this episode of the podcast right here. I have not gone to therapy, but it's something that I have been more and more intrigued by over the years. I think it started for me with Charlemagne the God's books. There was Shook ones, and then I can't remember the name of the other one. But I read both of those, and therapy was, especially Shook ones, I believe. There was a major theme of therapy in those books. Talk about that a little bit, man. How has that influenced your artistry?
Yeah, it's actually something I wanted to get into for a couple years now, but I just kept pushing it off, pushing it off. I don't think I was being as intentional with myself years ago. Like when we talking about college days, like everything had to be right now. I'm not thinking about, what's going on with me right now and how I can implement daily activities for my involvement, as a man. Just being able to put language to how I feel, like that just changes everything. It changes the way I think, the way I operate with other people, and learning how to set boundaries. Like I could go on forever and ever, but therapy is I don't know if it's for everybody, but I know for me, it's definitely been beneficial for sure. And I definitely share, like, I'm open. I'm not embarrassed about it. I'm sharing it with you guys on this platform. I've shared it with, my family members and stuff like that because they come from a different generation to where, they think if you're going to therapy, something's wrong with you, that you depressed or something like that. It's not even that. It's just that, like, I just want to be better, you know? And
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I've gotten more interested in it over the years. Particularly, I'm a big sports guy, and
Mhm.
so there's all of these athletes have talked about it. Particularly like NBA and NFL players are kind of the ones whose stories I get intrigued by. And I remember listening to this interview Quentin Richardson did. I think it was probably on his podcast, and he was talking about how he eventually got into therapy. But he talked about earlier in his career, Ron Artest was kind of the first NBA player to be open about, like, man, I go to therapy. Like, I think he thanked his therapist after the championship. Quentin Richardson's talking about how, like, at first when people kind of pushed the idea on him, he was like, man, I'm not crazy like Ron. Like, Ron is
Yeah,
crazy. Like, I don't need to go to therapy.
yeah,
But it's not about being crazy, right? Like, it's about taking care of the most important muscle in your body.
definitely.
So yeah,
Yeah,
you have to take care of that mental. No,
yeah,
that's dope, man. Thanks for sharing that.
yeah, no problem, no problem.
Yeah,
I
appreciate
just
the
want to
openness.
be, somewhat, if anybody else who watches this platform, like if they was thinking about therapy or kind of scared, like I'm doing it. So, you should do it too.
For sure.
Yeah, it's important, mind, body, spirit. I've been in therapy on and off since I was 9
Mm,
because I had anxiety issues as a kid. And so it's one of those things where you start to develop tools, right? So you can be better, like you said. So thank you for sharing that because that's not always something that people are forthcoming about.
yeah,
But let's pivot back to the music real quick. Maryland Boy.
yeah,
Talk to me about this character, Mason Dixon.
yeah,
Now, we know about the line, but talk to me about Mason Dixon, what they represent in
yeah.
this album, and what you wanted to convey through that character as you hear this entity appear throughout a couple of songs.
Yeah, yeah. For those of you who know nothing about the DMV area or Maryland, the state itself, Mason-Dixon line is like a borderline that basically technically separates northern states from southern states. And this goes back to slavery and all of that stuff, American slavery. Hence, that's why I had my track list covered the way it was with the whips on my back and everything. That just ties into this thing of Mason Dixon. And Mason Dixon actually is a character that I wanted to really represent Holy Spirit, the Holy Spirit. I talk about God a lot in my music. I'm a very spiritual person. He's Mason Dixon is more so like a guide, that I'm following through my journey. And it just so happens that the Mason Dixon is like an actual thing. But like if you listen to the intro, he's basically playing a spiritual guide in my journey and telling my journey and sharing my journey and just being open and transparent about where I come from.
That's super unique, man. Did it take you a while to come up with that concept? What inspired that?
Not necessarily. When I think America, because I'm from there, like Mason Dixon is just in the back of my mind. And like I said, I told you I do a lot of research and stuff like that. So I research a lot about American slavery and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm like, how can I introduce this world in the most unique way possible? So I'm like, okay, what alter ego can I come up with? Let's go with Mason Dixon. And how can I tie this into my spiritual realm? Let's make this character represent the Holy Spirit.
Sticking with the theme of music, tell us a little bit about how the DMV influenced your sound. Like we said before we started recording, I lived out there for a little while. I didn't get into the bounce music that much. It wasn't for me. Yeah, or I'm sorry, go-go. Yeah, I'm getting you confused with New Orleans. My bad. The go-go. It just wasn't for me. But I'm curious if you ever got into that stuff, and just also how Maryland has influenced your sound.
Yeah, yeah. Go-go is like I love hip hop, but go-go is like one of my favorite genres ever. Out the womb, that's something out that I was hearing, around the house in my neighborhoods and stuff like that. If you go back to college days, I actually put go-go on one of the skits in my intro. But if you don't know what go-go is, you might not even pick that up. So I just want to put that out there. But yeah, go-go and the DMV definitely inspired my style more so than my sound, if you get what I'm saying. In terms of how I dress, my lingo, the way I talk, the way I approach things, more so was inspired by where I'm from. But in terms of the way I write, it came from elsewhere. If I had to pick one person who influenced me from the DMV area, it would have to be Wale. Wale for sure. Shout out to him. He just dropped a new album.
Hmm.
Power and Problems is my favorite track on that project.
I was just
But
listening to
yeah,
Belly this afternoon.
yeah, yeah. Wale is the biggest thing that we have from the DMV. And he was definitely an inspiration because, coming into music is like, who do I look up to? Who did it before me, who came from the city? And it's Wale, you know what I'm saying? So much respect. And shout out to Wale. Yeah. In terms of my writing style, it would have to come from him or elsewhere like New York, Jay-Z, West Coast, Kendrick, down south, Andre 3000, Big Boy, but yeah, my style comes from D&B in terms of the culture itself, in terms of my writing style and the way I want to create my albums is elsewhere.
Very cool. Thanks for detailing that a little bit more.
Hmm.
So this style, this root, right? You said it's different necessarily from your sound, but the style, the visual, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The sound, all five senses are connected. Ears correlate to the eyes. How do you feel like connecting do you find any unique challenges connecting those two? When you're making your music or coming up with a visual, does one come before the other?
Hmm.
Sometimes do they sprout at the same time? I'd love to hear about that connection because you're
Yeah,
building out a multifaceted world.
yeah. It's actually not that challenging for me to come up and create this stuff. Because at the end of the day, it's just me. So it's easy being me every day. It might be hard to translate it to somebody else, though, to create and package something and be like, here, listen to this. And people hear it. It's like, where did this come from? Like, I feel like I'm getting culture and style from this area of the States. But in terms of storytelling, it's coming from something else, so like, how are you packaging all of this together? And it's like gumbo to me. That's how I'm inspired. So that's the only way I know how to create, you know? Like I'm inspired by the BGs, the stylistics, Erica Badu,
Hmm.
Kendrick, Wale, Future, all of this stuff in one package, But it's hard to get away from that. So it might be hard to translate it to someone else because it's something that people never heard of before.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I feel like been a challenge with me, packaging something that's digestible to people with all the ideas and inspiration that I have going on in my head.
Yeah. There's a lot to say, there's a lot to do, there's a lot you want to present. And
Mhm.
you sometimes you only get one song or one album to do it, right? Which is really where the question comes from, because it's like
Yeah.
you're tying so many different things together.
Mhm.
Is there ever a time, maybe in Maryland Boy or some of your other albums, where you said, I'm going to break off a piece of all of this and really focus in? Is there any example that really highlights maybe one certain aspect of who you are amongst the variety? Because I'd love for our viewers and listeners, when they go through your catalog, to say, we understand Leek is all of these things,
Mhm.
but here he shows us this, and he's very proud of this. And I wanted you to talk about a little bit. Is there any place in your catalog where you really feel like you focus on one thing so people really understand this aspect of you, whatever it might be?
Yeah. To be specific, it's the song "Safe." It's the second track on this Maryland Boy project. It's 100% me. It is like I'm telling my story of where I come from and also who I come from and things that I endured on my upbringing. But it's also very jazzy. Always it's like very musical, and that comes from me being from the DMV and growing up on go-go and stuff like that. But it's also like this eclectic vibe that comes from down south. I also have family from Georgia, from Atlanta to Savannah. So those are my roots as well. So that is like, to answer your question, the mixing pot of to give a taste of who I am and for it to be a little bit more digestible. and not be so scatterbrained, if you get what I'm saying.
No,
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. Leek, that's a perfect transition into song of the week because Safe is my song of the week.
That's what's there.
Yeah, that was my favorite song off of that project. I love the instrumentals of that song. In general, I love your album has really good pace with the instrumentals. It has a good flow to it where it feels like it rides really well. Like this project is really good to listen to in the car. And I really like Safe, partially kind of what you just said. I felt like I was driving in the car with you in particular. And it felt like you were kind of taking me through your childhood. It felt like I was kind of getting a lens into what it was like being in Maryland as a child for you. And maybe those visuals popped out to me because I lived in the DMV for about 2 years and I got a general sense of kind of the neighborhoods that you may have seen, got to know some people and got to understand some of the trials and tribulations of those areas. But yeah, I really liked Safe. I really liked the way it rode, and I really liked feeling like I was getting a lens into kind of your life experience. So that was a really
Yeah.
special song for me.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. I just wanted to give people a taste of what Maryland was like, and the best way I can describe that is the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
You could get city life if you want to. You could be on the DC side. You could be in Baltimore, or if you want to chill out and for nobody that you don't want to be in contact with nobody, you can go out Western Maryland where it's more farmland, or you go out Annapolis to water. So it's literally the best of both worlds. Yeah, you get young professionals, you get entrepreneurs, you get corporate people, everything in between.
Yeah, I loved the DMV, man. I loved everything like you just said, man. Like I loved having a great DC weekend, and then I loved when people came to town and be like, "Yo, let's go to Baltimore."
Yeah.
It's a totally different vibe, and it's right up the road. So
Mhm.
yeah, I was a fan of Maryland for sure, and I loved that song. So appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, man. I'll give my song of the week now. This song of the week selection for me is off Emotional Gangsta from 2022, Heartbreak of a Sagittarius Queen. I'm picking Blank Face. I'm going way left with it. This
Yeah.
is I love this song, particularly because like the curvature of how you layer your vocals, everything kind of inflects upwards, creating this sense of anticipation, at least from my point of view. There's this heavy synth in the background that kind of fades into piano chords that comes back with like a twinkling synth of some kind. So you've got this texture as you lay down the landscape. And then you've got these reversed vocals before the beat drops. And you get into the second portion of the song. And then this was my reference to the movie. You said, I'm the spook who sat behind the door. For those
Ooh.
of you who don't know that 1973 movie about a black man from Chicago who infiltrates the CIA, comes back to Chicago, and basically raises a generation of freedom fighters. I thought it was so interesting that you made reference to that. I want to ask you about that, but I'll finish up my little spiel real quick. Just to hear all that sonic texture, the layering of the vocals, the depth of the subject matter, and then even references to like very well-known art of its time, in this case, that 1973 film. It was really cool to hear you validate what I thought I knew about you, which is you have a general understanding of a lot of different things and then go deep on a few things at a time to really
Yeah.
expand your world and your universe. It was really
Yeah.
cool to hear that, man. Before we go to your song of the week, I do want to ask a question. What inspired that choice to weave that art and that story into this song? And then I guess that'll be my first question. Then I got one more after that.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for going back and listening to that. Cause I know I'm far removed from that project. Like it came out in 2022. I probably was making it in 21, so but thank you for that. We spent a lot of work, a lot of time, late nights on that. But in terms of speaking on the spook who sat behind the door, like I told you, I do a lot of research on just Black history and just history in general. And I needed to take that concept and connect it to something that I was experiencing with one of my childhood friendships. I wrote it in the perspective of basically telling the story of one of my friends who is now in prison, and he was locked up at that time as well. And I kind of wanted to be the spook who sat by the door, by his cell, and be able to tell his story, to a certain degree. It's funny how we can grow up with people as kids, you feel like you got the same outlook on life and the world, but then you start to get older and experience different things at different times, and you just kind of veer off like this. It's just so funny. Like we was going to football practice together, we was going to school together, elementary school. he's probably getting in trouble together. But now we're adults and we live in two totally different lives. And it was like, how can I tell your story? How can I share my perspective of what I think your life ended up to be? You know, and blank face basically means like just not having any emotion, not thinking about your actions and how they can affect your life and others, and just being so cold to yourself and the world, not taking care of yourself. Basically, is how I can reflect on how I created that song.
Okay, you answered my second question, which was, what does blank face mean? Because I really
Yeah,
just wanted to make sure I was right. I was right. So there you go. I still got it, folks. I still got it, you know?
That's dope, man. I love the spook that sat behind the door reference. That's a good one. All right, Leek, do you got a song of the week that you want to highlight?
yeah. I would like to highlight the seventh track of my project, Maryland Boy June. This track, I named it June because I'm a summertime baby. I wasn't born in June, but I was born in July. Usually June is when, the party gets started, with summer, hot girl summer, hot boy summer, whatever,
We're well aware for sure.
Yeah, a lot of activities start to take place in the summertime.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to reflect on that just because if you listen to track 6, that is a skit. It's like a real skit. It's a jail call, and that connects to my friend that I was talking about on Blank Face, actually, and how I just wanted to tell a story like, I want you to do good in life, man. Like, we grew up together, you know what I'm saying? Yes, we live in 2 different lives right now, but I want you to find a different perspective on life, like how I talked about on June, like, you need to live a life in better fashion for your mother. Like, there's people, like, you have family members that's probably younger than you, that's looking up to you. Like, you need to set a better example. You just need to take care of yourself. And yeah, that was my reflection. That's my extended reflection of that skit on track 6 and Blank Face. So I'm glad you brought that up. But yeah, it's a cool vibe. It's very fun, but the things that I'm talking about is just very serious on the track. I kind of like to talk about now at least serious things, but in a way to where it goes right over your head, or to where you have to listen to it a couple times to actually know like what I'm really talking about.
That was my second choice for song of the week. So I'm
Okay.
glad. I'm glad you highlighted it. There we go. I still got it.
Yeah, I was about to say we love it when the artists agree with our picks and why, like, when we think it's dope and they think it's dope too. That's always a good feeling. So that's great, man. Well, look, Leek, we appreciate you taking the time to do this. I want to like personally thank you for just like putting yourself out there, bro. I don't think people realize how hard it is to put your artistry out there, to put that much thought into it. There's a vulnerability to that I don't think people totally understand. You are taking your intellect and your creativity and putting it out there for the world to hear, and you don't know how people are going to react. And we, on this channel in particular, really have a deep appreciation for that. So thank you so much, man, for coming on the show. That it means a lot to us.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you guys. I'm very grateful for this moment, because I really feel like God is like working through y'all. Like I'm a music lover, man. So I'm y'all like when I'm not doing things like this. You know what I'm saying? Breaking down, lyrics and the stories that other artists tell and how we can apply that to our lives, every day. So yeah, I'm very appreciative of this moment and appreciative of people who just take the time to listen to my music. Even if you don't break it down or just understand what I'm saying, just taking the time to listen. But the fact that you guys can look at it in a deeper realm that I, put this art out into the world. I'm so grateful for that. So thank you guys.
Nothing but positive momentum for you here on out, man. It's pretty cool to see over the course of your projects that I listen to, you change and evolve. I won't say like develop, because I don't know what that means from an artist perspective, because
Mhm.
we make music and we make our things how we make them. But it is a really compelling listen, and we're grateful that you saw some of our content and decided that we were a conversation worth having.
Yeah.
So before I toss it off to Jordan to close us out, I'll just say thank you, Leek, for joining us. Thank you for making the time. Hopefully this isn't the only conversation we ever have.
Yeah.
And for those of you listening on the channel or, on streaming, because I don't know where Jordan puts his stuff, I just show up for vibes. Be sure to follow Leek on all the socials. Be sure to stream, download, buy, if there's physicals out there, a Maryland Boy in
It'll be
college
soon.
days. Okay, there you go. See, Wait in Anticipation by College Days, Emotional Gangsta, Maryland Boy, and some of the other projects as well. He's an artist worthy of your time and consideration. So we hope you watch this interview and feel that permeating through the screen. But that's my spiel, Jordan.
Thank you.
Take us home.
Bill said it all, man. This is the Song of the Week podcast with Jordan and Bill and our very special guest, Leek Mali. We will see y'all next week. We'll see y'all in the new year, man. Until next time, we're out of here. Peace.
Peace.